The message is that all of us are going to know someone that's going to die, and we have to face our own death.
Nothing works if you don't allow yourself to feel the pain.
I really do think it's still a massive taboo, because in our society we so want to fix things, we want to make things better. Grief is invisible, which is how it can get so ignored. What I learned was that what you don't say is in the end what harms you.
Hi everyone, welcome to Grief Works. Thank you for joining us. First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss. Grief is such a painful process, and it can be surprising just how strong the emotions can be. They can be so unpredictable and suddenly hit you like a truck at any given moment. And other times, they can come slowly and feel like they're going to linger forever. I know often we don't realize how painful our losses can be when we're so involved in the admin, trying to sort out the funerals and the various other aspects. And it's only when we actually have some time alone to ourselves that we really start to feel the pain under the surface. Sometimes you might even block the pain for many years, 5 or 10 years, before we take the opportunity to really see what's going on. And it's understandable, as grief is painful. So honestly, well done for coming here. We understand how hard it can be. Grief is naturally a very sensitive topic, so we'd like to invite you to put aside any distractions for just the next short while. Maybe closing any computer screens you've got open, or putting your phone aside and putting it on silent, so you can allow yourself to reflect and go inward and just understand how grief is affecting you. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to Julia. Julia is a psychotherapist that has been specialising in grief for the last 33 years. She's Vice President of the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy and is the founder patron of Child Bereavement UK, where Prince William is also a patron. She's supported thousands of people around the world in their grief. She's the author of 3 best-selling books, Grief Works, This Too Shall Pass, and Every Family Has a Story. She's been on TV shows around the world, including Megyn Kelly in the US and Good Morning Britain, and many others. And as The Times says, she's full of compassionate wisdom, which I have no doubt you'll also see for yourself. Julia, it would be wonderful if you could share a little bit more about your experience with grief.
Thank you, Nick, and for the intro.
My pleasure.
I think, like everybody in the psychotherapy world, we are informed by our own stories and our own experiences. And when I was a child, I was brought up in a household where both of my parents had significant losses. So my mum was an orphan by the time she was 25. Her father, her mother, her sister and her brother had all died, all traumatically and suddenly. And my father, his father and his brother had also died. And so there were these black and white portraits around the house of these people who were no longer with us. But my parents never talked about them. And when my mum did talk about, particularly her brother, it would be like it happened yesterday, that there'd been, like there was this invisible pool of loss that was sort of sitting in her body that was there for decades.
Yeah.
And I think, it is no surprise that from that influence, when I became a therapist, that I unconsciously I chose to specialise in grief. So grief is an invisible process. So this external event has happened, but the turmoil and the distress and the pain of it is invisible to everybody else. And the ignorance that people have about grief means that they don't get the right support for themselves. So grief often feels like fear. It often feels like there's this Jaws music in your body, dung, 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 dung. And you get these shocks and waves of the fear, but you can also get shocks and waves of absolute pain that stymie you and kind of freeze you in the middle of a supermarket. And you can feel numb for months, even years. Your memory is much worse than usual. And I mean, I think one of the most difficult things about grief is that it's kind of chilly and you feel very alone. and everything that you feel is unfiltered, and you don't really have the capacity to moderate your own feelings. So it affects your relationships. It affects how you feel about work, because often work can feel meaningless and pointless. You look at your best friends who have the person that has died, and you begin to hate the person that is your closest friend. So it plays out in your relationship with yourself. That often grief, one of the most other difficult things is that people turn against themselves because they somehow think that they're failing because they're feeling so much, and they feel that they should be doing it orderly, like Marie Kondo your feelings, like the sort of 5 stages of grief. And you can't. You can have 15 emotions all at the same time. And so what really helps people is having a relationship with themselves that they can begin to slow down. And it's a bit like going into a very messy room. You can begin to take out each aspect of yourself and understand it. And then when you have a kind of image for it and an understanding of it, your compassion for yourself, your response to what you feel is much more effective. And that is how you heal.
And so what are some common symptoms that people experience when they go through grief?
Grief is very embodied. Sometimes people can't sleep. Sometimes they sleep all of the time. Sometimes people can't eat. Sometimes they can only eat and they kind of try and fill the hole with food. And also you can have physiological symptoms. People often talk about, like, my heart is hurting. Men often talk about that their legs are hurting. They want to run all the time. And you can have this kind of tightness in your whole body, and your capacity to kind of manage yourself is foreshortened. So you're feeling much worse. Your body is feeling much worse. And you can literally feel like you're going mad.
I imagine a lot of the people who are watching this, they hear those symptoms and it really resonates with them. So how do you actually go about working through the process of grief so you can come out the other side and feel in some way more healed, if that's the right word?
I think what really helps is having a structure that gives you insight and understanding to what you are going through and enables you to begin to kind of take a step back and look at it so that you can then step in and support yourself. Grief is universal, but it is also very uniquely personal. So when someone has access and insight to what is going on inside, they feel like they have more agency, they have more control. And one of the awful things about grief is that sort of powerlessness. So once they have an understanding, they feel like, okay, I get this. And actually live out the theory, which we talk about, is the accommodation of grief, which is that as you, over time, incrementally adjust to this new reality that you didn't want and you didn't choose, you build your life around the loss. Often the thinking is that your grief gets smaller and the pain gets less. But actually, as the Tonkin theory shows, when you're first bereaved, and maybe for months and months, it feels like all of you is grief. It's this big hole that is the person-shaped hole in your body. And over time, as you incrementally adjust and allow yourself to express it, every time you express it, you incrementally heal a little bit more. And as you do that, you have more psychological energy for living and engaging in life. So you then have this building around the loss, accommodation, and so that you have more life in your life and you're more engaged with your life. But you can step back and connect to your grief and your loss, whenever you choose.
So the first step is really getting an understanding of the process, what you're experiencing, so you realize that you're not going mad. This is a normal physiological response to this terrible instance in your life. And then the way you heal isn't about kind of forgetting and moving on. It's actually that same, I guess, pain that has been there from that loss. Instead of kind of letting it go and it dissolving, you build I think you talk about your new normal around that, and it grows. That's beautiful. It makes sense.
And it's lovely the way you've said it. And I think one of the things that we, because we have so much technology, we'd like to be able to kind of swipe and have control. Like, I'm going to switch to a different mood. I'm going to switch to feeling okay now. And actually, what we're showing in the GriefWorks app, and is everyone's experience, whatever their experience is that you can't will or control what you feel. But if you can access support to allow yourself for it to come through your system, every time it comes through your system, you do adjust. And then that, as you said, allows you to heal and build your new normal, your new relationship with yourself and life and everyone around you, given that this person has died. So one of the things that I hear over and over is people's reluctance to feel the pain of grief. And it's sort of paradoxical because, of course, you don't want to feel pain. But unfortunately, pain is the agent of change. And so when people do allow themselves to feel it, experience it, voice it, and release it, that is how they incrementally heal.
And I guess it's like with a whole number of other emotions. A lot of it is learning to just sit and be with the emotion. It's almost kind of like, it's not saying you necessarily tolerate the triggers or the reasons behind it, but the way to heal is to let it in, let it be, and then only then can you really let it go. And I guess it's similar with anxiety and sadness, but it's similar with grief, I imagine.
Yeah, because, emotions have a physiological, psychological component, which is they are transmitters of information. Grief is an emotion to say, face the reality of your loss. Because as you face the reality, you incrementally adjust. And when you block those emotions coming through, you don't adjust. And your brain is a learning machine. Your brain wants to learn. It wants to adapt and change. But our kind of will and our determination not to feel pain blocks it. So everything people do to block pain is the thing over time that does them harm. And sometimes that's through generations. So there's a dual process in grief, which is when you allow yourself to feel the pain and express it, it releases you then to be restorative, to have a break, to get on with work, to get tasks done, to kind of sort your food out or be with friends. And then that gives you the psychological energy to go back and do the grief work so that you do move between the two and they facilitate each other. And that is very kind of calming, because the more you recognize your own patterns and the ways that you respond, you befriend them.
Yeah.
And it's, befriending and tending to yourself is how we heal. So I think one of the things that's really important message to get across is that although people may feel that they're abnormal, that they're going mad, whatever that is for them, that whatever they're feeling is normal, and that grief has a process and a time span and a way of kind of coming through you of its own. And the key to your outcome is accessing good support.
And so what we're trying to do in the GriefWorks app is essentially create this environment where people feel safe to explore and go into their pain and allow themselves to feel it and process it, which I guess can be very difficult to do when you're completely on your own and you've got no kind of structured process in which to follow. So I guess that's really what we're doing.
That's exactly what we're doing, in that both with the 28-day course and then with all the different tools, people can choose what they need in that particular time and, get in the driving seat of their grief. So by choosing the course, the aspect of the course that is particularly troubling them, or they particularly want to find out about, or they particularly want to address, they can do that. Or they can go through it in order, which gives them a feeling of kind of control 1 to 28. But also if they wake in the middle of the night with a pounding heart, or they have a difficult thing facing them in the day, they can go to the tools and use a visualization or a meditation. So it's everything in one place that enables you to have this sense of safety when often the whole system feels like it's in fear, it's on fire. Yeah. And so when you can go to the app, you can press it, and then you can habits kind of grow in us, and so you associate the app with a sense of safety and a sense of like, this is going to sort it for me, and of course that amps up the impact of it, and people find it profoundly helpful.
Everything's so much easier when you have support and you do it together. And just knowing that you're not the only one experiencing this, which I think is so, that's why the community I find is so powerful, because even if you're not necessarily contributing, just going on there and realizing that someone else is experiencing something very similar to what you are, suddenly gives yourself permission to feel, it's okay, I'm feeling like this. It's okay, I'm feeling angry. It's okay, I'm feeling jealous. It's okay, I'm feeling guilt. I remember the last session we did around guilt, and it was what we were using as a topic for a breakout session. And when you brought it up, I was surprised. I was thinking, really, most people resonate with guilt? And it was incredible. Almost everyone in the session had some element of guilt surrounding the death. And you could just see the waves of relief as people discussed it with one another, that they weren't the only ones feeling it and were having difficulties moving on.
I mean, I think that's really true, is that, you know, we're also wired for connection. People need people, and they particularly need people when they're suffering. And I think what's so brilliant about the community and the live sessions is that, as you say, some people may talk and that may help them, but others will be listening and observing and kind of nodding silently. Oh my goodness, that's what I'm feeling too. I can see that, I can see that. Or something that they haven't even thought about, they will hear, and that will support them afterwards. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, of the famous kind of 5 stages of grief, she said guilt was the most painful companion of grief. And guilt comes from many different aspects. Some of it is survivor guilt, that we are the person that lived and the other person died. But it can also be around the circumstances of the loss. You know, what if only I had? And it can be regrets. But guilt often sits in our system, and it does battle with our head. So our thinking knows that we're not guilty, but in our heart we feel guilty. So through the community and the connection of others, when we understand that everybody is feeling guilty, it stops us making the feeling a fact. Because you can separate out, I'm feeling guilty, that doesn't make it so, doesn't mean that I am guilty. When we're in a particular kind of emotional state, it's a bit like the weather, whatever that state is. When you're really hurting and missing the person, it feels like I'm going to be living here forever. You know, it's never going to pass this. I'm going to be stuck in it. And it's the same like when you're in a rain shower, you kind of never believe the sun is ever going to shine. But if you can kind of access the support to weather the internal weather, then it does naturally adjust and the sun does naturally shine. So one of the things I really think is very useful and actually practical in the course is my 8 pillars of strength. So one of the pillars is your relationship to the person that has died. And what we understand, which I think a lot of people don't recognize, is the task of mourning is facing the reality of the loss and feeling the pain of it, and kind of recognizing that person is no longer physically present, but the relationship with that person continues. The love for that person never dies. And so through that pillar, I introduce touchstones to memory, ways of connecting and remembering the person that's died. It may be wearing a piece of jewelry, it may be cooking their favorite dish, it may be going on a walk that connects you with them. But it's that you keep the connection and the love for that person always. That never goes. You know, people often talk about, you know, my dad died, but I asked him, should I marry this person or should I take this job? And they will have an internal version of their dad that can answer them. So the course kind of encourages and shows that. Also, our relationship with time is altered when we're grieving, because we can have this longing to be in the past and the fear of the future where it looks kind of terrifying. And in our relationship with time, what I suggest in the course is that you need to keep your time frames short so that sometimes you can keep it to half an hour, like I can manage this for half an hour because the pain is so great, or I can keep it in the day. I can manage today not to look into this unknown, frightening future, but also allowing the difference between chronos time, actual time, 1, 2, 3, 4 days, and kairos time, felt time, and recognizing that grief is felt. And so we can't judge ourselves by chronological time because it has its own felt process that we need to support. And I think actually all the pillars are really good, but one that may be useful for everybody to kind of know is structure. So structure within the app echoes what I believe is very helpful when we're grieving, is that because it's random, because it's unpredictable, because it's chaotic, having a structure that we can shape our day around, that we can decide what we can manage, but also the structure of the app enables us to feel contained and enabled to feel that we have some agency and that at the end of the day, I've done what I set out to do. When often you feel very powerless in your grief and that you're kind of despairing and helpless. But actually, if you set out your structure, you're going to do a little bit of work, you're going to take a bit of exercise, you're going to say do the journal or gratitude, then that's your day done and you feel like, okay, I did the day as I was meant to do, and that really supports you.
Yeah. A lot of the reviews have been about the morning and evening reflections.
Yeah.
Just, it's such a small little thing to do, but having a few minutes to reflect on something you're grateful for just slowly allows the light just to creep back in. And then once they do that, often people say, then I feel I can face up to doing a session and delving into it. Some days they do, some days they don't. And this woman wrote a lovely email into us just saying, thank you for, she didn't miss a day for an entire year writing in every single day into that gratitude journal, because she said it just really, as you say, I think it's these incremental things done consistently over time, which just slowly allow your new normal to expand while you keep that love and connection for the person.
Because we know that small steps have transformational effects. And that hope is the alchemy that turns the life around. And so having that hope come into your system by achieving those small goals that you set or acknowledging the gratitudes, that then gives you somewhere to aim for, somewhere to look towards, and also the belief that you can make it happen. And then that really does have big transformational impacts on how you are as you navigate your process of grief.
And I think one thing which is so wonderful is there are different ways in. Because some people actually, the first week is quite a difficult, or the first 7 sessions are quite a difficult 7 sessions, because you really do
Invite
loss.
people.
Invite people, sorry. You invite people to face their loss. And I know some people aren't ready to delve quite into that, and they like going into the live text chats. They can just chat through with a person in real time. And then the other elements, which I know people find helpful, is the tools. And this is what I found so useful in the community in the last session as well, actually, where this woman shared about you do a meditation to take people through what they're feeling in the body and giving it a shape, giving it a texture. And she said as soon as she could bring kind of life to what she was feeling and almost objectify it, it released and opened up this wave of emotion,
So
which just came through her. And I think a lot of people find it easier to just use the tools to start off with when they're feeling particular difficult emotions, and then they can move into the course.
And I think that is the kind of bi-direction of it, is that for some people they'll need to kind of soothe their system and regulate themselves so that they can have the tolerance and the kind of dare to go into the more difficult parts of the course, like the circumstances of the death. But other people will do the course and then go to the tools to down regulate afterwards, and that the same person can do different things when they choose. So it's incredibly kind of creative and adaptable to suit your own needs at the time that you feel in that moment. You know, I believe in the app so much, and it does something that nothing else does, in the sense that it is affordable in a way that therapy for millions of people isn't. And even if they can afford it, they can't access it, as you say. But the fact that it gives people so many different modalities and choices of how to support themselves, that it's all in one place, you feel so kind of chaotic and unable to organize anything for yourself, that you kind of will continue not getting support because you kind of have the despair, I'm going to feel like this forever, and you don't have the kind of gumption to get what you actually need. But we know that the earlier you get support, the more able you are to adapt and change and grow. But also the longer you leave it, the worse your outcomes are. So the fact that you can have, the sessions in the course, the tools in the course, or the journal, as well as the grief chat and availability to talk to therapists, I'm just incredibly proud of. And every time I hear people's feedback about how it's changed their lives, it almost makes me tear up. I just think it's doing a really good job.
So my name's Libby, and my husband Tim died suddenly and unexpectedly of sepsis a week before Christmas. And we met at university in 1967, and a few months before he died, we'd celebrated our very happy 50th wedding anniversary. So I'm afraid last Christmas was a total blur. I remember just wishing things would just go away.
I was widowed in April 2019. My partner was 52 and I was 50, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumour in June 2017.
My wife died through suicide in March 22. Bridie was the most significant, important person in my life. We met and we started dating when I was 16. Bridie was 17. We had 45 years together. Really, I can't say how overwhelming it was.
I lost my dad last year. He was diagnosed with cancer in April, so it was quite a quick illness. All very shocking, and I actually left work to care for him with my mum. So it was quite an intense, traumatic time.
It's been now 7-8 weeks since my mum tragically died unexpectedly.
My name's Paul, and I was bereaved a number of years ago. My son Tom died.
I started using the app a few months after we lost our son, and I'd been carrying around this pain in my chest, and it was just this weight and this tightness, and it was like carrying around, the best way I can describe it was like carrying around this huge stone, but it felt like I was clenching around it and holding on to it. And I guess in the early days I thought, it just means I'm going to have a heart attack. And I thought, I don't really care actually if I have a heart attack. I've lost my son and I don't care, so take me. That's fine.
I went back to my reading group, so people said to me, you're doing really well. But underneath it all, I didn't think I was. I lost a lot of weight. I suffered from palpitations, which I've never had before, exhaustion, anxiety, and at one point in April, I had a panic attack, and I thought I'm absolutely losing it mentally and physically.
I came across the Grief app and I started using it straight away. First time I used it, instantly I just found there was a comfort and support in it.
Most of the sessions that you do, I would say you feel better pretty much immediately, because I think first of all you realise that somebody understands the way that you can feel sometimes, and that also there's help available, so that there are things that you can do about those, sometimes horrible emotions that you think are just horrible, and there's nothing good that's going to come out of that emotion.
It was like someone was holding my hand. It's like having a Julia walking with you, like having her, like whenever you need, it's just there. And so that helps, like in the phone, it's like it's there.
It encouraged me to face up to my aspects of my grief, instead of trying to run furiously and get on with life and not let you get things down, and people saying you're doing brilliantly. It actually just to stop and take stock. And go towards the pain and the anger and all the other emotions and try and work through them. For example, a terrible feeling of guilt. I kept having flashbacks to seeing my husband there on the 18th of December, thinking, we both thought, it's flu, and it wasn't. And if only I'd called the ambulance sooner, and if only the ambulance hadn't taken 5 hours to come, things would have been different. But how do you deal with that? Well, the app helped me deal with that, and lots of other emotions too that we all know and experience.
I started using the app, and it was brilliant, and it was so helpful. And there was one particular exercise I remember where I remember lying in bed and listening to the exercise, listening to your voice, Julia, and you were talking about visualizing the grief and where it was, and what it looked like and what it felt like and what colour it was, I think, almost. And I remember picturing this horrible dark black stone that was sitting in my chest. And I got quite upset. It was quite an emotional exercise to do. But then next day, the pain had gone. That ripping had gone, it had released. And it was a physical shift. It was such a powerful thing to experience.
I think it gives you an opportunity and a protected time and space to really reflect on your grief. Sometimes you only need 10 minutes, or you maybe have half an hour and you can do a little bit more.
It gave me a structure and a sense of control. Instead of doing things because I thought I ought to, or because people asked me to, I took charge of what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do. And the 28 sessions, I know that you can do them as and when you want, which was a great help, but I actually did them one after the other every day for 28 days. And
you did it one a day for 28 days?
I did one a day for 28 days, and it was
great.
I made a cup of tea every morning, took it to bed, and put my phone off and did put the ringer off and just worked through them. And I looked forward to it every morning, that I could have. It was like having the counsellor with me, but not that if I couldn't face it, I could pause it, I could stop, I could go back to it later in the day. So that feeling of in your faceness that you might get with
someone poking around you.
Poking around in that wound, it wasn't there. Well, it was there, but I was doing the poking.
You're choosing, you were in charge.
Exactly.
In the middle of the night, I was waking up in a panic, then I would do a meditation. I would do the breathing exercises. First thing in the morning, I would do the same. At my very lowest points, I was able to contact the live counsellor, which was really, really, really helpful.
And I used live chat counseling, and that was also really helpful when I was like, I can't do any of these tools, I can't do anything, it's just too much. Just brain was just like, feel like it's melting, I can't comprehend anything, pain was just too much. And then I just opened and just like, hello, anyone? And it's just helped.
You feel like you've achieved something afterwards. And also I always feel calmer and more reassured after having completed a session.
Learn about more about yourself than you ever realised. And you will also see how far you've come, even though you don't think you have.
Looking back over the sessions, I tried to think of a point where I started to actually feel better. And I think the turning point for me was about session 17, about just over halfway through. And as you mentioned just now, Julia, one of the activities you suggest is writing a letter to the person who died.
Yes.
And I did. And it was very hard, and it took me ages. And I used a whole box of Kleenex during it, but it really worked, because I think I cried more at that time than I had since he died. But afterwards, I felt a sort of calm acceptance.
Did you feel like something had come off your...
Yes.
A weight had been lifted?
It was. I mean, there was a sort of the acceptance of the fact I knew that he'd never come back, obviously, but I sort of let myself accept it, and that that life would never be the same. I'd never be the same, but I started to see what's meant by building a new normal, all the little activities that had been built into the program I'd done, and I would realise slowly I was doing that. And now I do find that the little glimpses of happiness are more than the sort of jumping into that puddle.
So, I mean, I've recommended it to my GP. People have just been so isolated and thought, well, if you had this, you know, then you would have something that supports you emotionally as well as cognitively. I just think it's been brilliant.
I would have no hesitation in recommending it to somebody.
Yeah, my dad passed away 20 years ago. Like, technology back then was non-existent kind of a thing. But if I had it then, my grief process would be different. I was so like grateful that it's there. So, you know, I can't recommend it more. So yeah, thank you both.
Didn't know what to expect, but I would say this would exceed anything that I would have thought it would have been like.
Like you have been my main support. I've done the app diligently for more than a year now. And I listen to you in bed every morning.
Oh,
and
John.
you saved my life.
Oh, John.
You got me through it.
Everyone who's grieving now, that they will see that the things do get better, even if you don't realise they are at the time. It's humbling to see how many people are in the same situation. And one of the quotations that really made me think that it's true is one of them that's on the app. Sorry if I'm misquoting slightly. It's not time that heals, it's what we do with that time that heals, and that rang a bell with me.
Don't worry, you're not alone. And that's exactly why we developed this app. So you don't have to feel alone. So you can navigate the overwhelm of emotions. So you do have help the moment you need it. That's why we created this, and we're here to support you.
We'll share with you a bit more detail about the GriefWorks program and how it can support you. First, we have our 28-session interactive therapeutic course. This course is designed to help give you a structure and guide you through processing your grief. You can do it at your own pace and in your own space. The sessions are just 10 to 15 minutes long, so they're easily manageable and you can either listen or read. There are 3 parts to the course. The first part is designed to help you face and get through the pain of the death. And it covers topics such as working through fear, anger, numbness, sadness, guilt, and hopelessness. The second part is to help you develop your pillars of strength and to help you manage the day-to-day pain of grief. It teaches you things like how to say no to situations you don't want to go to, coping behaviours, and also, crucially, how you can rest and restore. The last section is to help you adjust to your new normal, where you can learn to stay connected to your loved one, understand who you are as an identity without them, and how to rebuild your life after loss. Each day, you'll receive daily reflections designed to bring light back into your life gradually. These reflections offer hope and encouragement, helping you to see progress and find moments of peace amidst the pain. You'll also have access to over 40 tools specifically designed to help you through the overwhelm of day-to-day grief. There's tools to help you stay connected, work through difficult emotions, find strength, and also calming evening meditations and sleep stories if you can't sleep. You can also text chat live with our empathetic bereavement counsellors from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing, we will be there to support you. We also provide live sessions with Julia, the Vice President of the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. And here you can ask her your questions directly and get support from the UK's leading grief therapist. In addition to Julia's sessions, we also host weekly member meetups on Zoom. These smaller, more intimate gatherings allow you to connect with people who've lost someone in a similar relationship as you had, whether that be a partner, a parent, a child, a friend or family member, or even a pet. Or you can also connect to people by the type of loss. So whether that be a sudden unexpected death, a suicide, Maybe you have multiple losses, or even anticipatory grief, where we experience a living loss. In these groups, you can share your experiences, give and receive support, and find friends on a similar path. We have an extremely supportive and compassionate community that are here to welcome you in. 93% of the times people use the app, they report feeling better or much better. We've had over 1,000 5-star reviews of people sharing how the program has helped them. GriefWorks is also endorsed by leading charities like Cruise and has been recognised by Apple as App of the Day. All this support comes at an affordable price. For about the same cost as just 2 one-hour therapy sessions, you will have 24 hours a day support, 7 days a week for an entire year, with the ability to chat to grief counsellors anytime you need included within that. We also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure you're 100% satisfied without commitment. You can try the course, the tools, the counsellors, join our compassionate community, and come to a live members meetup to see if it does help you like it has so many others, all at no risk. Grief is a truly personal journey. You don't have to walk it alone. We're here to support you every step of the way. Join our compassionate community and let us help you to soothe your pain, find your strength, and heal.